Rain hammered the pavement outside St. Mary's Medical Center as Emily Carter hurried toward the emergency entrance. Her blue scrubs were already damp, her dark hair was coming loose from its tie, and her hospital ID swung against her chest with every step. She had just finished an exhausting shift when she heard someone shouting behind her, "Emily." She stopped and turned. A man in a white tuxedo jacket was standing several yards away. His name was Daniel Ross, a wealthy businessman she had once known personally. Tonight, however, his face was filled with anger. Daniel walked toward her through the rain, his expensive shoes splashing through puddles. "You knew this was happening and you didn't tell me?" he shouted. Emily looked confused. "I don't know what you're talking about." Daniel pointed toward the hospital. "Don't lie to me. Everyone knows." Emily shook her head. "Daniel, I have been working all night. I don't know what you've heard." His voice became louder. "You always have an excuse. Several." Hospital employees looked through the glass doors. Emily lowered her voice. "This isn't the place to argue." Daniel stepped closer. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." Emily stared at him in disbelief. "I never tried to embarrass you." Suddenly, a loud helicopter sound filled the sky. Both of them looked toward the hospital parking area. A large black military helicopter appeared through the rain and descended onto the wet landing zone. Wind blasted across the pavement, sending rain in every direction. Daniel stopped speaking. Emily looked toward the helicopter with a strange expression. Several armed military personnel jumped out and moved quickly toward the hospital entrance. Daniel looked at Emily. "What is this?" She didn't answer. One of the soldiers approached them. "Nurse Carter?" Emily nodded. The soldier immediately became serious. "We need you inside, now." Daniel stared at her. "Why would the military need a nurse?" Emily turned toward him. "I don't know." But her expression suggested otherwise. The soldier lowered his voice. "There's been an emergency. You're the only person they've requested." Daniel looked confused. Emily followed the soldier toward the entrance. But before she disappeared inside, she turned back. "Daniel, whatever you think you know about me, it's not the whole story." Then the hospital doors closed behind her. Daniel remained standing in the rain, staring at the helicopter. For the first time that night, he wondered whether he had made a terrible mistake by judging her. Inside the hospital, Emily was escorted through the emergency department by two military officers. Doctors and nurses moved around them as patients were treated. Emily finally stopped and demanded an explanation. "Tell me what's happening." One officer looked at her carefully. A military transport aircraft was involved in an emergency. Several personnel are injured, and one of the commanders specifically requested you. Emily's face became pale. "Who?" The officer hesitated. "Colonel Marcus Hayes." Emily closed her eyes for a moment. That name belonged to a part of her life she had tried to bury. Years earlier, Emily had served as a combat medical specialist. During a dangerous overseas mission, she had treated wounded soldiers under impossible conditions. After the mission ended, she left military service and became a civilian nurse. She never spoke about her past, not to coworkers, not to friends, and certainly not to Daniel. When Emily entered the emergency treatment area, she saw several injured soldiers being brought in. One of them immediately recognized her. "Medic Carter?" Emily froze. The soldier smiled weakly. "I knew it was you." Emily moved toward him. "Save your energy." She began checking his condition. The doctors around her were surprised by how quickly she understood the situation. Her old military instincts returned instantly. She gave clear instructions and helped coordinate the emergency response. Meanwhile, Daniel had entered the hospital. He had been allowed inside after explaining that he knew Emily. He watched from the hallway as she worked. The woman he had just accused of lying was suddenly directing a room full of medical professionals and military personnel with remarkable confidence. Daniel's expression changed. A senior officer approached him. "Are you Daniel Ross?" Daniel nodded. "Yes." The officer looked at him seriously. "Then you should understand something. Nurse Carter isn't just a nurse." Daniel looked toward Emily. "Who is she?" The officer replied. "She was one of the most respected combat medics in our unit." Daniel stared in disbelief. "She never told me. She doesn't tell many people." Daniel remembered every cruel word he had said outside. He remembered accusing her of lying, humiliating her in the rain, and assuming she was hiding something shameful. But now he realized she had been protecting a painful past. Emily eventually walked toward him. Her face was tired. "You came inside," Daniel nodded. "I needed to apologize." Emily looked at him quietly. "You don't have to." Daniel shook his head. "I do." She looked away. "Not now. People need help." Daniel finally understood the difference between them. He had been worried about his reputation. Emily was worried about saving lives. The emergency continued for hours. Emily worked alongside the military medical team until the last injured soldier was stabilized. When the situation finally became quieter, she stepped into an empty corridor and leaned against the wall. Daniel was waiting nearby. This time he didn't shout. He simply said, "I didn't know." Emily looked at him. "You didn't ask." Daniel lowered his eyes. "I thought you were hiding something from me." Emily gave a tired smile. "I was, but not because I wanted to hurt you." Daniel asked what had happened during her military years. Emily hesitated before finally telling him the truth. Years earlier, her unit had been sent to evacuate wounded personnel after an attack. The situation became chaotic. Their evacuation route was destroyed. Communication failed and several soldiers were trapped. Emily stayed behind because she refused to abandon them. She treated the wounded for hours while waiting for another extraction team. Eventually, the helicopter arrived, but there wasn't enough room for everyone. Emily gave her seat to a severely injured soldier and remained behind with another medic. They were eventually rescued several hours later, but the experience changed her permanently. After returning home, Emily struggled to adjust to normal life. She left the military and became a civilian nurse because she wanted to continue helping people without living inside the memories of war. "I didn't want people looking at me like I was some kind of hero," she told Daniel. "I just wanted to be Emily." Daniel nodded slowly. "And I treated you like you were someone I had to expose." Emily looked at him. "You judged me before you knew me." Daniel couldn't argue. Suddenly, the hospital lights flickered. An emergency alarm sounded again. A patient had suffered a sudden medical crisis. Emily immediately turned and ran toward the treatment area. Daniel watched as she once again became completely focused. She didn't care who was watching. She didn't care whether anyone praised her. She simply acted. After the patient was stabilized, Colonel Hayes approached. "Emily, you saved another life tonight." Emily smiled. "We all did." The colonel shook his head. "That's why they asked for you." Daniel finally understood. The military helicopter hadn't arrived because Emily was in trouble. It had arrived because someone trusted her more than anyone else in an emergency. Daniel looked toward the window. Outside, the rain was beginning to slow. He realized that the woman he had humiliated had spent years quietly carrying responsibilities he could never have imagined. By early morning, the emergency department had finally become quiet. The military personnel prepared to leave, and the helicopter waited outside under the gray morning sky. Before leaving, Colonel Hayes approached. "Emily, you should come back with us." Emily smiled gently. "No, Colonel. My place is here." He nodded respectfully. "Then we'll remember where to find you." Several soldiers stood behind him. One by one, they thanked Emily for her help. Daniel watched from a distance. He no longer felt jealous, angry, or embarrassed. He felt ashamed of the way he had treated her. When everyone had left, Daniel approached Emily. "Can I say something?" Emily nodded. Daniel took a deep breath. "Last night I thought you were hiding something because you were ashamed of your past." Emily remained silent. "But now I understand," he continued. "You weren't ashamed. You were carrying memories you didn't want to turn into a story about yourself." Emily looked at him. "That's closer." Daniel apologized sincerely. "I'm sorry for shouting at you. I'm sorry for humiliating you outside. And I'm sorry for assuming the worst about you." Emily studied his face. "I accept your apology." Daniel smiled faintly. "Does that mean we're okay?" Emily replied. "It means you have another chance to earn my trust." Daniel nodded. "I'll take it." Before he left, he looked toward the hospital entrance where the helicopter had landed. "You know, when that helicopter arrived, I thought your life was falling apart." Emily smiled. It was actually coming together. Daniel laughed softly. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The soldiers boarded the helicopter, and Colonel Hayes gave Emily one final salute before climbing aboard. Emily returned the salute briefly, then turned toward the hospital. Daniel watched her walk away in her blue scrubs. He finally understood why she had never talked about her past. Some people carried their greatest victories quietly because they weren't looking for applause. Emily had saved soldiers, treated strangers, and spent years helping people without asking anyone to call her a hero. Daniel had judged her because he saw only the surface. The military had seen what was underneath. As the helicopter lifted into the morning sky, Daniel stood beside the hospital doors and watched it disappear. Then he looked toward Emily, who was already returning to work. The woman he had humiliated the night before had become the person everyone inside the hospital trusted when things went wrong, and Daniel learned a lesson he would never forget.